Welcome to
Crazy, right?
A podcast
Be your own person.
for those affected by
Crazy, right?
mental health,
I wanted to just try it.
Crazy,
It's something that I've struggled with for a while.
featuring live improvised music
Now I finally got my head right again.
by your host,
am I right? Crazy,
It feels good to talk about it.
right? Crazy, right?
Dave Asher.
My guest today is June Converse. She is an author and blogger who provides an authentic look at the day-in, day-out worries, hopes, dreams, and fears of suffering from bipolar. After several downward spirals, she is now able to share and write from a place that inspires others through her struggles, helping them to feel safe and to express themselves as well. June, thanks for joining me here today online. Let's connect our computers and see what happens. So June, just to get started here, I'm a little curious to know, how did you first hear about my podcast?
Emily sent it to me. She does all my social media stuff for my upcoming book. I'm not out in the social media world very much. It's overwhelming to me. So she sent it to me and she said, I want you to listen to this and see if you think what you're trying to accomplish kind of fits what Dave's trying to accomplish. So.
And you mentioned I can definitely relate to that, not being really involved in social media too much. Would you just give me a little bit of a background to your experience with social media? Have you ever had a negative experience with it, or is it just you never got into it at all, or is there something about it that is triggering in some way?
So I have an Instagram account. I've never posted on it. Emily does that. And it's so funny, Dave. I get these little emails. I loved what you posted today. I'm like, I have no idea what I posted today, but okay, I'm glad you liked it. It's Facebook that sent me unhappy with social media. So I did the whole Facebook thing when it came out. First of all, it was a huge time suck. So we'll start there. And I think the final straw for me to be personally on Facebook was I had this acquaintance who posted this huge long thing about her wedding anniversary and how wonderful her husband was and how wonderful their marriage was, and it went on and on and on. And I happened to know they had not spoken to each other in 5 years. And I was like, okay, if this is what we have to be out here, I probably don't need to be out here. So I had to really pull back from that in order to keep myself from saying something I shouldn't. So does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
And the Twitter stuff, I just don't do. I just think it's a 240 character waste of time. And I think all of it can be such a time suck. And surely I could do something healthier than watch what, people are having for dinner.
And getting back to that couple, so do you feel like, with respect to social media and maybe life generally, do you suspect or feel or resonate with the idea potentially that in life you're expected to put on a happy face generally, and potentially society expects us to hide our true selves or our true pain, just in the notion of conforming to in life we're all good and everything is going okay?
Especially, I was raised in a strict Baptist household. So we were raised very clearly, you keep it at home. We can start there. Keep it at home. Better to be seen and not heard. And if you really trust God, you should not be having any issues because God is in control, right? So even all this bad stuff works out to the good. Whether it did or not, that was what we were told to believe. So yeah, it's a trigger for me because some of these people that are out there posting all this la stuff that I know is not accurate are those church people, and I think that's one place some authenticity needs to be, and it's not, in my experience.
Yes. So getting into that a little bit more. So, what was your relationship like? Just give me a little bit more of that arc in terms of what you said. It was a Baptist upbringing.
So let me go ahead.
Yeah. No, please take it
So
away.
let me back up just a little bit further. So my father was an abusive alcoholic, and from the time I was born to the time I was 10 years old, we never set foot in a church. Like, didn't really know what one was. Then my father found God, and all of a sudden he's a Baptist deacon, and we are in the church 3 times a week, and he runs the place basically. So it was really confusing for me, but I bought into it hook, line, and sinker because I wanted to make my dad happy, because, that was what children did back then. So I stuck with the church until I was 43 years old. And Dave, I have not set foot in one since. The thought of going into one kind of freaks me out a little bit. So.
Did I hear that correct? You stuck with it till you were 43?
Yes.
That's a long time, really, in my, certainly. Would you take me a little bit on that journey? So you started out, your father finds religion, and becomes a deacon,
which is a big deal in the Baptist church. So.
Right, and so you're as a dutiful daughter, you're going along with this, and that's really a long time to go from that to 43 years old. I guess I'm interested a little bit in more of that journey. So what could you relate to me, maybe the first thing that would fall into the category of something that was a negative thing that happened in your life, or a negative sensation or experience that you had that you were then meant to view through a positive light as this just being something that God has set up for you?
I started a private school that was Christian-based, and that clearly was the right path. So if I want to use the Baptist terminology, that was the path God set out for me, because it was clearly the right place, the right time. Everything came together for that. So that reinforced these Baptist beliefs that God has a plan and He has a purpose and all those things. So I definitely felt like I believed that, like He was answering prayer in a very personalized way when I started that school.
And were you experiencing that? So you're on board at that point.
Oh yeah,
sounds like. And would you? What was there a first moment when you started to doubt that?
Yes, it's a very distinct situation. I had a mentor that helped me run this school. Strong Christian woman, slightly different Christian sect, but still very. And one of our students stood up and said, "I want to buy this car, and my father doesn't want me to." Now, he was 16, and I said, "You need to be. This is between you and your parents." My co-worker stood up and said, "If God is telling you to buy a car, then it doesn't matter what your parents think." All right, so we had a problem, right? And she basically accused me of not being a Christian. She walked out of the school, never came back. And it just kind of was a light of, wait a second, am I seeing all of this correctly? So it really put a lot of doubt in, because I really had a lot of trust in her faith and how she was running her life. And it really was she just abandoned me, basically, because we didn't agree on something. And so that was kind of the beginning. That was when I was like, okay, wait a second. If you can be abandoned that quickly and that easily, there's something wrong with this faith that I had bought into. And that's what has come out even more, this kind of abandonment idea.
Would you continue about that? Although I did want to clarify one thing. When your father became a deacon, how old were you?
I was, he found God when I was 10. He probably became a deacon when I was 11, 12. I mean, it was quick. It was as quick as it could happen.
And then it sounded like in that story you were working at the school.
I owned it.
You owned it. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just missed that connect from being a middle school child or a grade school child and attending a private Baptist education to going from that, in my mind, kind of jumping ahead to the story of being a grown adult owning a school. So, I don't want to take this story out of your hands, but how did you go from being a student in a private Baptist school to owning one?
Well, it was one of those things I would have said, 15 years ago was a God thing, but it was certainly a universe thing. My daughter was an elite gymnast, and in order to stay an elite gymnast, she couldn't go to public school. Well, it turned out there was a lot of people that way, and I was a public school teacher, so I just quit the public school and opened a small school. Primarily, it started out for elite athletes that couldn't be on the normal track, but it was very Christian-based. We had Bible every day. They had Bible verses every week. I mean, it was very clearly supposed to be this Christian fundamental school that I ran for 10 years.
Okay, and so you mentioned there, and again, I'm sorry if this is jumping a little bit all over the place, but you mentioned that it appears to me that you went from a perspective of that God is putting your life together for you from a Baptist perspective, and then you dropped in there that while it might not have been God, you felt like it certainly was the universe. Mm-hmm. Does that resonate with you now in terms of that things happen to you not necessarily from a Baptist God perspective, but do you feel like there is a force or an order or a power to the universe generally that is laying out or interceding into life in some way?
It depends on when you ask me. I think more than believe it, I really want it to be so. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I want the 40 years of my life that I believed in all of that to have some element of truth. I also would like to look around the earth and go, okay, there is some rhyme or reason to some of this stuff. And that's what I want to believe. Depends on where I'm at that day, what I really believe. And that's a struggle for me because I had this strong faith. And when I went through all my own mental health struggles, it disappeared with everything else. And I haven't been able to rebuild it.
Let's go into that then. So can you take me back to the first time when you felt, maybe before you had a diagnosis and maybe significantly at a young point in your life? Myself, I first was experiencing symptoms of being bipolar 1, when I was around 24 or 25. Could you relate to me, again, before a diagnosis, mm-hmm. when you might look back and say that was an early or first manifestation of mental illness?
That's easy. First thing, I was anorexic. We didn't call it that. Nobody used those words. But in high school, I weighed 85 pounds, 90 pounds, and I ate M&Ms. I mean, it was that strict. Of course, we didn't know what that was then. Nobody even said it was bad. It was just what it was. From there, I turned to alcohol. So I was squashing it all instead of, so that, again, nobody would have called it anything. It was just how I was managing these feelings that I couldn't manage. And we were absolutely, in our home, you were not allowed to discuss anything like that. My father once told my mother she needed to pull herself up by her bootstraps and shut the F up about it. So, I kept it quiet and just turned to alcohol. So I think my first crash was probably around 25 when the world kind of went overwhelming, and it was my own, I'm going to use the word fault, but because one of my coping mechanisms was to take on doing too much. So if I filled my life with responsibility for other people's stuff, then I was okay. But at some point, it overfilled. So I got really lucky, Dave, because both my brothers are alcoholics. My father was an alcoholic. I would have been, but I ended up suffering from acid reflux starting in my mid-20s. And I couldn't drink anymore. So...
So with anorexia, and the notion that is not talked about, and you have to basically deny that, and then the near brush with, I guess, having to live a life addicted to alcohol or giving in to an addiction to alcohol. Was there so what age does that bring us to now in your story, June? I'm curious. I know from a pre-interview that you have rapid cycling bipolar. Can you recall a time when in life you were aware of, or in retrospect could look back and point out, that was a time when I was too high or too low by standards of a healthy range of emotions or behavior?
I can remember being too high in high school when I would stay up hours and hours and hours, way past a reasonable time, day in and day out, to make sure the yearbook was ready. Like weeks of just be at school at 6, stay until 10 o'clock at night to get the yearbook ready. And that was just this high energy, up cycle that I certainly didn't recognize at the time. I just thought I was doing a good thing. I thought I was being responsible for the yearbook and this great, person. And it wasn't. It was just high energy. Hate to say it, but one of the things that works for me with bipolar is when I'm on that upswing, man, I can get it done.
And does that, you're a writer. Mm-hmm. And when you're writing, and as I understand it, you have two main books that you have written and published to date, correct?
Correct.
And
the second one comes out in August, yeah.
Okay, second comes out in August, presumably soon, because it is August.
The 22nd, yeah, the 22nd.
Right. And we will plug all that for sure. But is there an aspect of the mania that when you are writing, even now, with your diagnosis and presumably meds, do you still feel a sense of hearkening back to those yearbook productivity times in high school, where when you're writing, you are utilizing your mania to be productive and potentially work late hours into the night on your writing?
Well, let me just give you this scenario. So the first book, it came to me while hiking. The story came to me, the characters came to me while hiking. That was when I was really trying to take care of all these pieces to try to keep the bipolar kind of contained and manageable. And I came home and I couldn't put it down, and I literally sat down and wrote 300 pages almost without moving. So I sat on my deck, and by the time I moved off that deck, I had written 300 pages. So that was a definite mania world. The other thing that happens to me is, and this happened just last week, I kind of put off writing, and all of a sudden, 30,000 words were due, and that mania kicked in. And I guess to say, it's terrible to say, but it kind of came to my rescue, and I got it done in 3 days. So yeah, it definitely, still today, if I'm in that mania mood, I can move and get it done still. Yeah.
And as far as those stories go, what would you sum up for me, or give me what is important to you about the story that you wrote after coming back from that hiking trip? This
is a story of a woman who lost everything and she had to figure out how to come back out of it. She had to figure out, did she want to? So let's start there. She had to hit the bottom. She hit the bottom, and she had to decide if it was worth coming out of it.
Give me a little bit more about this woman, and let's, for the moment, now I know and can imagine that this woman is loosely or somewhat not loosely based on your experience. Just treat this character for a moment as not an extension of yourself, if you can, and just explain to me this person's story, and using those terms, bottoming out and coming out of it, and those are fine. But I'm really interested as well in specifics, like what does this person do for work? How does the bottom present itself? Like, pitch me on this story.
Okay.
Even separate from the story it tells about yourself.
Okay. So my main character is a woman who is a grandmother. She has retired with her husband to the mountains. All is well until an attack on Christmas Eve, and her entire family is slaughtered except for her. She's left alive, and she is left scarred, physically and obviously mentally scarred. So she goes to a rehab center after being in the real hospital. She goes to a mental center and absolutely refuses to do anything. She will not speak. She will eat only for sustenance. She just will not, she does not want help. She wants to wallow in her misery. She leaves there, goes to a beach cabin that she bought, and for 3 years doesn't speak to anyone. She wears sunglasses, she walks on the beach, and she reads all day so she doesn't ever have to think. And then somebody intervenes and pushes her out of that and forces her off the bottom. Actually, no, Dave, that's not true. Somebody enters her life and forces her, you either need to get off the bottom or be done with life. But this is not going to work anymore. So that's what it's about.
Thank you. That's a wonderful description, and I think it's obviously a very compelling narrative and character situation. Would you... So now, given that, I'm interested in this character who provides the main character with this choice of you can give up or you can fight back, it's just such a rich story. Was there? I want to come back to that character. What is that character's name? The character who comes in and provides the main character with that choice point. What is that character?
His name is Matt, and her name is Kathleen. So, Matt.
Okay. Is Matt, for you, is Matt based on somebody in your life, and how they reached out to you at some point?
I think I would say he's a compilation of a few people. My husband, in the aspect of Matt where he was going to stand there and be supportive no matter what that looked like. Then there's therapists along the way, and I could specifically kind of label who they are, that were very challenging. And, at one point, one of them did say, no one can make you get better. You have to decide to engage or not, and no one can help you with that. That's the choice you get to make. So, so it's kind of a compilation of people around me, some more challenging than others.
And in the story, when Kathy, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Kathy has to make that decision, what does she decide? And if the book makes it that far, does the book make it that far to where she makes a decision?
The second book does.
The second book. So you left that first book on somewhat of a cliffhanger.
Well, you think at the end of the first book, you're pretty sure she's decided to get help. But what you don't know is what that means to her and how hard that's going to be. So the beginning of the second book opens with her beginning to be frightened of getting help. And so you've got this couple chapters of, is she going to be willing to go do it?
And so now, going to the aspect of this, which I think I had heard from you prior, is somewhat loosely autobiographical. For you, did you have a tragic event such as this character, or is that a dramatization of something that is, I don't want to say less extreme, but what would be the personal tragedy / challenge that you in your life might have had to sort of hide away from?
Right. So, interestingly, when I read the book the second time after I'd written it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. I just didn't kind of really catch on. But by book 2, I caught on, but into book 1. So April 2012, this is going to sound like the most minor thing in the world. I was way overwhelmed with my school. I was working all day, every day. I was teaching everything but physics and foreign language. I had kids in my house till 10, 11, 12 at night. And I got what no one else in the world would think is bad news. Okay? So in a rational mind, it was nothing. But it was like the straw. And I honestly, Dave, that happened on a Saturday. I have almost no memories until Wednesday. My husband comes home that Sunday afternoon and the house has been destroyed. Things have been thrown in the garbage. Anything at all religious was not only thrown in the garbage, it was destroyed. Phones yanked out of walls. I don't remember any of that. I went to school to work that Monday morning, and my assistant turned to me and said, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you have to leave.
So just to clarify, at this moment, this is 2012, you said, and so this is, you're still running the Baptist school at this point.
Correct. And I was still a believer and ran my school, and everything was, from the outside world, it looked good. But then go ahead.
It sounds like then there was potentially a moment that you were not even, that somehow maybe even a blackout experience.
Correct.
Where you, it sounds to me like revolted against the experience that you were having as a running this school. Right.
I mean, and it just, yeah.
And you tore things up. You were potentially manic, out of control, lashing out against this station in life that you had been.
Right. And again, I have no idea. That happened on a Saturday morning. I vaguely remember the phone call for the quote bad news. And the next thing I remember is my husband finding me in a hotel on Wednesday morning because he searched the credit cards.
What, out of curiosity, that I'm curious to, what else happened on that? I mean, this is probably not the appropriate term, but this bender that landed you in a hotel room, tracing the credit cards. What else might your husband have found on those credit cards?
All he found, so what we've pieced together, okay, is that when she told me to leave the school, now this is my home that this school is in. So I basically, for whatever reason, she felt I was unsafe for the kids. I've never really asked her, and we can talk about why that's the case, but I do remember vaguely getting in my car. And I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have 285, which is the big perimeter, and it's like 63 miles in circumference. And I drove it over and over and over. I mean, I just drove it until I got on the highway to go south. I was going to go to a beach, and just never come back. I was never going to come back. I don't know what I was going to do. It wasn't rational. And I got afraid and pulled over and checked into a hotel at 10 o'clock in the morning. I do remember that the guy at the hotel looked at me really weird because people don't normally check in at 10 in the morning.
Right.
But he let me have a room. And then the next morning, Dave knocked on the door, and I was still in the bed.
Dave, that's your husband.
Yes, sorry, that's my husband.
Right. And at this time, so 2012, and it sounds like you were 43 at that time. Is that correct?
Yep,
Or
yep. About like that, yeah.
And what were you at that time? Were you on any medication for your bipolar?
No, I wasn't seeing. Well, I was seeing somebody at the time, but I wasn't on medication. I was seeing a therapist, but not a psychiatrist. So my husband called that therapist, of course, and she basically worked really, really hard to find a rehab center for me to go to. But it still took 4 weeks for them to have room, and I sat on, talking about how I modeled my character, I sat on my deck every morning from the time we got up to the time I went to bed for 4 weeks. I didn't read, I didn't do anything. I just sat, it felt catatonic. Now I know that's clinically not what I was, but that would be the word I would have used at the time. And then he drove me to Chicago to an inpatient rehab center.
And what was your experience like in that inpatient rehab center in Chicago? Was that did that inspire you to take a different approach to your mental illness with respect to medication or self-care? Tell me a little bit about what that inpatient experience was like.
Oh, well, that's the subject of book 2, just so you know.
Great.
She steps into an inpatient rehab center, and it's her experience there and his experience not being able to help her because she's been dropped in this rehab center.
When you say his experience, you mean that her husband?
That Matt guy, the Matt character,
yes,
yeah.
right.
You know, he's got this plan to stand next to her and help her through it all, but he can't go, right? It's inpatient rehab. So it was... I was so happy to be there because I felt I was finally not burdening my husband. So I was happy to get there. But the very first thing that happened there set the train to a bad situation, and it took me. And so I have kind of a negative halo about it after that because of what happened. And I'll be happy to tell you if you want to hear it. When I came out of it, so it was every day, all day. You started at 7 in the morning. You didn't stop till 10 o'clock at night. There was something every hour. What was a struggle was, though, I was surrounded by not like people. They were much younger than me. They were anorexic. They were eating disordered. There weren't that many people my age. So it was I ended up, I don't know, I didn't feel, I never connected to anybody there. And that was not helpful, right? The therapist was good, very good. We did get me on some medication, which was very helpful. They were very good on that end. We definitely put a plan in place for when I got back, very clear plan. The school ended up closing, so I lost my career. All those Christian friends I had, only one of them wrote me a letter. So that went away. I tell people that as far as God's concerned, he does not come to rehab centers. He does not visit those places. He's not there. So I came out having lost everything, but also having both my husband and I, a new respect for I needed to change how I was living my life and make it a priority. Physical health, mental health, all of those things needed to be put back in place in a healthy way. And it's 8 years later, and we still are super conscientious about that. Like my husband will say to me, all right, we've gone one step too far. We got to back up. We've gone one step too far. So I think from that aspect, it's been really helpful to be able to look at my life a little more objectively and go, okay, you've just done one thing too far. You've taken on one thing too much or whatever. So
it sounds, 2 things I want to pick up on there. One, it sounds like one of the main takeaways from your time in the center was an understanding of your own mechanism of how you go about things and managing your life, that you maybe push yourself too hard, and potentially this relates to the manic cycling, that you are, and this is a simple term maybe, but that there's maybe too much go in your approach to how you approach projects or life?
Oh, absolutely. It was what I really came out of there realizing was I was living to make other people happy, and not considering myself at all, which was why students were still at my house at midnight. I mean, who allows that, right? Who does that? It's why I was teaching every class but physics. So, I mean, I know you can't imagine how much planning that was, but yikes. Because I didn't want to disappoint any of those people. So, yeah, I came out of rehab very clearly knowing, it's okay to say no. It's up to me to take care of myself. And if I don't say no, then people are going to take advantage of me.
If you were to guess, or I guess, looking at you as the main character of your life, which of course you are, right? Outside of maybe a chemical imbalance, what might you think might be in your backstory about your character, something that might have led to this kind of workaholic personality? Was there anything with connection to how you viewed your father or how you viewed the church? Is there a nobility, a religious nobility in being have such a strong duty to advocate and take care of the minds of these children? Where do you reckon that might have come from, that intense workaholic nature of the go and doing these things for the children and working yourself, I guess, to the emotional and sometimes working yourself to the bone like that? Right.
Well, when you write a book, if you're writing a dramatic book, the most important thing is to know what the character's lie is. What emotional wound do they carry throughout their life that they need to work through? Well, so working through all that, for her, I was able to work through it for me. So it was very, just in order to understand the whole concept, of course. And one of the first things I can tell you that I remember my dad saying was I was a disappointment. And things to the effect of, every time you do something I'm proud of, the next day you disappoint me. And it was just a refrain. You're a disappointment, you're a disappointment, you're a disappointment. So I spent a lot of my life trying not to be a disappointment. So when it came time to take care of other people's educational needs, or choosing to do such a thing, I did not want to disappoint. I did not want to disappoint the student. I did not want to disappoint the parent. The work ethic came from, my father worked 3 jobs. The only thing he respected was hard work. Both my brothers are really hard workers. We all kind of have that same dynamic, because that was how respect was earned in my home, was hard work. So they kind of go hand in hand. I don't want to disappoint, so I'm not going to say no, because that's disappointing. And hard work is where you have your value. That's the only way to be valuable, is to work hard for others. So, and when all of this was happening, this huge implosion in my life, my parents lived with us. And it really freaked my dad out, because he did not know what to do with it. So it was real interesting. There's a whole nother dynamic going on there, because he was watching it and didn't know, what to do with the mess that was being created. Because I couldn't pull myself up by my bootstraps. And I was disappointing the whole school because it closed. And so he was struggling with his own thing as I was struggling with my thing. So it was a real interesting time. So.
And what is your relationship like now with your father? Is your father still alive?
Well, my parents both died last year, but I will tell you the last memory I have of my father. So my father and mother lived with me for 8 years because they needed to. Then some situations changed and I needed to move. So my brother came to live with them. And my brother had lived in another state for 20 years, no help at all. And all of a sudden he's here to help, which was great. Okay, so that really was great. But this is the brother that was always the favorite child. I was the one that wasn't. I was the disappointment. He was not. So the very last thing my father ever said to me was, I was giving him morphine, and he slapped it out of my hand and said, "Don't touch me. I only trust your brother." So that's really the last thing my father ever said to me. And thankfully, my brother jumped in and said, "Well, I'm going to give it to you too." So he was very supportive of me, but it was kind of the last memory I have is him reminding me he didn't like me as much as my brother. So that's how our relationship ended. He died a year ago, like almost exactly. And my mother died 5 weeks before him. So it was a very, very intense time. So.
When I want to go back to something in your experience with the inpatient in Chicago. You described that one of the main takeaways from that was how to manage your life and manage your time better in terms of not being so over the top about maybe the work ethic, about working so hard all the time. And you also mentioned in that period that it was a bit of a wake-up call to how religion in your life and the Baptist experience was being framed as a negative influence on your mental health. Is that fair to say?
At least from my experience, when I look at the big God in the sky, the heavenly God, for use Baptist terms, I couldn't separate him from my human father. So for religion, for me, became run to make this big God happy. So that became just, in other words, never miss Bible study, never miss your journaling prayer, never miss church. It became another way to just pile it on, instead of being this peaceful experience, supposedly you're supposed to experience. So does that answer the question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's a fascinating answer to the question. When you're describing God and your sense of the universe, it still sounds to me, and I know you mentioned earlier that this is something that is maybe in your mind, and probably everybody's mind to some extent, something that is not a crystal clear personal understanding, but just trying to connect a dot or two here. It sounds as if there's a notion of the Baptist God that is really tied in with your relationship of your father, and a necessity to serve the God or your father with good works and hard work, and that's the way you show your worship for the God character in our lives. Is there then, and I was curious too if this was introduced at all in rehab or in the inpatient treatment, if there was a new God character or power introduced into your mindset with respect to your health or your purpose in life. Was there ever, or is there, a transition from the God who demands hard work all the time and serving an earthly father as well, to any sort of other God spirit or energy in your understanding, and how that might influence your behavior or your mindset in a different path, a different direction?
So it's been 8 years. So this is still, I'm not through this journey. And sadly, I'm probably still way back. But what I came out of rehab with is these are the things I was taught that I don't believe. So I could give you a list, and I'll be happy to do that, of the things that the Baptist church, my Baptist church, so I don't want to disparage all Baptist churches, okay? But the lessons I brought in that I do not believe. So that God disappeared. I still have not completely reframed a new God or even a new spiritual exercise. I'm scared of it. I'm scared to get sucked into something that took me 43 years to look at critically. And, so now I don't really trust any of it. And that's a struggle for me because, it was something I was raised with. So just the idea of not believing it anymore, I was taught that meant I was going to hell. So, you either embrace this Baptist God and you do this, say these verses, or you go to hell. So I'm still in that I can't embrace that anymore, but I'm scared not to zone. But there are things about the God I was raised to believe in I cannot embrace in a loving God. So it's been really difficult. It's still difficult. It's 8 years later, and it's still something that I wake up one day and really want to solve it, for lack of a better term, and cannot.
Picking up now with book 2. I can imagine there's a part of you that doesn't want to give spoilers.
That's all right.
But yeah, I mean, the listenership of my podcast is not large enough. I think, hopefully, that you will not be as well shying away from spilling the beans a little bit about what happens. It sounds like you're open to that.
Yeah.
So we've got Kathy, and she's had this traumatic experience that's led her to kind of go numb a little bit. And then Matt intervenes and gives her this mission of, well, you can give up or you can fight, but it's kind of up to you, is what it sounded like. And then then we start with book 2, just at the beginning of that moment, so to speak, of where she might. That's the next step for her, is what happens next. Would you, if that is correct at this point, my recap there. Would you continue Kathy's story for me?
Sure. So in the first few chapters of the book, and I do not mind spoiling the book has a different purpose other than sales or anything like that. She is prepared to go. So she's having to go from Minnesota to Charlotte, North Carolina. That just happens to be the setting I chose. And on her way down, she's really reluctant to go. She's trying to get this gentleman, Matt, to understand how hard this is going to be.
This is going to an inpatient treatment?
Correct. So they're driving down to Charlotte because that's the treatment center. Kind of a long story, but she was in it before, so she feels comfortable with that therapist. So she's willing to go. And so she's kind of him and hawing and afraid to go. And then she has this horrible, horrible, horrible flashback. And it just really creates some chaos. And this Matt guy says, okay, you have to go or I have to walk away because I can't help you. This is beyond my ability. And I also can't watch you. So the 5th chapter, I think, she steps into the rehab center. And we watch her go through the different rehab modalities, therapeutic models, and how hard they are. So it's part of my goal in that was certainly for her journey, but I also wanted, when you drop your family member off in a place like that. So my husband drops me off in Chicago, 600 miles away, no, more than that. I can speak to him for 5 minutes twice a day. That's it. He has no idea what's happening to me in that place. And when he gets me for that 5 minutes a day, I either don't want to tell him because I don't want to revisit it for 5 friggin' minutes, or I'm only telling him the horror, right? The thing that's killing me that minute. So part of the book was very clearly, I want people like my husband to know what's happening. What's happening when you leave your family member there? So that's what it is. It's her daily experience. This is what happened, and this is what the therapist said to her, and this is how she felt. At one point, she gets asked to go to a 12-step program in this book, right? Because of self-harm issues she's having. And she says point blank, I do not believe in a higher power. I will not go. And so it's her having to come to terms with she lost her higher power in all of this too. So it's all of the things she's having to go through to work through this depth of despair, and how the rehab center is making her do it. So she goes through drama therapy in one scene, and certainly therapy. She goes through group therapy where there's this little young girl who just kind of makes fun of her and really pushes her buttons, and So that's what it is. It's just the day in, day out, while he is really struggling because, he promised to be with her and they're not letting him be with her. And then he's got his own issues too to deal with that he kind of didn't know he had until hers smacked him in the face. So it's both journeys. It's the person in it and the person having to watch it. That's the idea.
And in this second book, it sounds like the Matt character is even more like Dave, your husband. Is that fair?
He is. But a lot more of my husband is very calm, my husband is the flat pond, right? You throw a rock in it, it'll ripple, but it won't wave. Matt is not quite so calm. He's got a little more alpha dog in him than my husband has. My husband is this beautiful calm in the storm, and Matt has a little more rocking and rolling, waving going on. But that's been fun too, to kind of channel a different kind of man. So it's been kind of fun.
And there's so much there, but I did want to just get to, you mentioned that one of the reasons why you feel no difficulty or ambivalence about spoiling the book in any way is that there's a different purpose for writing this book, not just necessarily to tease it out and get people to buy it and get lots of book sales and treat it like maybe a normal book might have a press junket or whatever. It sounds like there's a larger purpose for this book beyond book sales. I was wondering if you would get into that.
Yeah, sure. For both books, actually. The first book came out. I didn't know what I was doing, Dave. I just published a book. I wrote the story, published it. I'm proud of it, but and it was, I'm not, in retrospect, it was really working through my own crap, right? It was really working through my own crap in a much more dramatized way. And somebody wrote a review, and you need to know I don't read the reviews. They would send me into the downward cycle. But my husband brought one home, and he said, I want you to read this one. And he said, the reviewer said, in the middle of the book, I had to put down my life and put down the book and reevaluate my own life. And I thought that was what I was trying to get people to do. I wanted people to step back and take a look at what they were doing. And were they on the right path? Were they spiraling and not bothering to stop? So that was what I wanted. This second one, I was very intentional in wanting people to know what it's like to really suffer mentally. And it is not friggin' easy to come out of that hole. So that was, it was very intentional. No, it has nothing to do with book sales. I was even, if we never even talk about the book, that would have been fine with me. That is not my reason for writing, which is good because nobody gets rich writing books anymore. So, and my husband, I just want to kind of give him kudos. He's never, ever asked for that. He's never expected that. He's allowed me to just do it and spend money to learn how to do it, and just because he thought it was good for us. So, and interestingly, Dave, I don't know that you want to hear this, but my son read it last night. He read it over the last few days. He never read it. And my son struggles with mental health issues. And I got this long email this morning from him. And he said, if I had known you could put it out in words like this, I would have talked to you about this sooner.
How old is your son?
He's 33.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
that happened this morning. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I kind of want to lean into that at the end here. Not only because it's just so fresh, but also because I just think it's really a significant part in my mind of this journey, in this interview for me anyway. So your son, what is his name?
Brian.
And so presumably at the beginning of Brian's life, was he being taught by you in your school?
No, he was older. My younger one was in the school. So my children are 11 years apart.
Okay.
So yeah, no, he went to plain old private public school.
And did he have a religious Baptist upbringing?
He did. Both my kids did, yeah.
And
and both of them have walked away. Mm-hmm. One more aggressively than the other.
What was the timing of it? Did they walk away before or after you walked away in 12?
My son had already started to walk away. I didn't know it as much because I was in it and he wasn't going to argue about it, right? He just slowly walked away. He got a little more aggressive in his walking away. I think some people said something to him, judged him. Some of these Christian people that, were our family friends judged him. And I think he slammed the door a little harder than I realized. And we've since talked about it, of course, but when he was going through it, he didn't feel safe to talk to me because I was in it. So my daughter, she just went to college and it just kind of faded out, right? She met other people that weren't religious. She just got to see the world, right? And so she just didn't embrace it as much anymore. And she's not anti. My son is anti. It's just faded away. So, and I'm actually kind of glad for both of them because I didn't want, now at this point in my life, I wouldn't want them taking my religion because it was my religion. They need to figure out their own religion. They need to walk away and figure out what they want to believe, as opposed to what I did. So. And
with respect to your brother's experience, your son's experience, Brian's experience with mental health, what? And you had had no sense prior, or no official sense that he had not shared with you his struggles with mental health prior to his reading your book?
Well, he did in January when his own life imploded. He didn't have any choice but to talk to us at that point because his life was imploding and, he needed his parents to jump in and provide some extra support. But Dave, at that time, he refused to get help. He admitted he had a problem, but he absolutely refused to get help. And at some point, I had to step away, kind of like Kathleen. I can't do this for you. If you don't want to get help, I can't rescue you. You're 33 years old. And I had to walk away. So for months, we didn't really communicate other than, are you all right now, kind of communication. And he's been trying to kind of bridge some of that lately, trying to kind of heal some of that wounding. But I don't think it was until he read this that he was like, I can talk to my mom about this. My mom really does get it. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. Like I said, I got that email this morning. So I don't know. We'll see.
What would be, so just to maybe take us out here in a bit of a theatrical / literary style here. Mm-hmm. If you were going to write a third book and weave into it the Brian character in some way into Kathy's story, what might that third chapter, that third potential final ending chapter look like for Kathy, and a version of the Ryan character?
All right. So in the book, Kathleen has lost her whole family, 2 children, 2 grandchildren, husband, and dog. So she has no one in that way. She now has Matt, of course, but she really has no one. I would love for her to see Ian. I'm Brian, but in my third book, which I'm writing, by the way, his name is Ian.
Okay.
Yeah, at least right now his name is Ian. Who knows? I would love for her to be able to see him across the room, basically, because they don't know each other, and see he's in pain and be willing to bridge that gap in in a you don't have to talk to me, but I am here kind of way. And there is nothing you're going to tell me that I have not been through. And to kind of guide the let's not pretend this isn't here vibe, and kind of take on that mentorship of let's not go down this path when we don't have to.
It sounds to me, and if you have any additional insight or agreement to this, and maybe this is contriving a resolution to the interview, or maybe it's not. You can weigh in on that. But this notion of pretending something isn't there, but it really is, does make me think a little bit about maybe the mindset of the Baptist upbringing. Of maybe denying some aspects of the reality of a child or somebody who is told to just accept things as a divine aspect of your life, and that everything is basically fine. Even also in terms of the way social media maybe tends to shovel things under the rug about what's really going on in our lives. Do you feel like there's a sense of maybe redemption in this third book of getting to kind of rewrite a history of how a parent-child relationship could be, in terms of acknowledging the difficulties of life, that everyone goes through these difficulties, and it's not just something that we chalk up to, well, that's the way God wants it, so if you're experiencing it as problematic, that's just the wrong way of looking at it?
You know, it's interesting. I have a writing coach, and I said to her just this week, I talked to her yesterday, and I said, I kind of want my character, I want to work through this spiritual stuff through my character. So it's interesting you brought that up, because I think that's what it's going to end up being. I think it's going to be the two of them. I think I'm going to have my little Ian character also have been raised in this oppressive religious environment, not necessarily Baptist. And together, they're going to try to come to terms with what to believe and to feel comfortable with, where they can live authentic lives instead of the life, whatever, holy book they study requires. So I don't know. That one's being muddled around as something I know I need to deal with, and yet keep resisting it. So I'm wondering if I can deal with that in a fictional way, kind of carve myself open, but through them. So we'll see.
June, good luck with that. I will be reading all three books. And
oh, good.
Yes. You shared with me a letter earlier today, and I don't really want to get into that too much in this. Well, now that it's been brought up, are you open to talking about that letter?
As long as you're open to me not being happy.
Right.
As long as I'm still angry, that's fine.
Yeah. Let's this is an interesting topic. It's a total topic shift, but I guess what I originally wanted to say, and what I do want to get on the record, regardless of how far into this we go, is I read just this letter that you wrote, an open letter to some people in your life who were judging someone for committing suicide, and claiming it to be a selfish act, the point of view of yourself in this letter was one of a very non-judgmental, and not necessarily towards the people who would say this, but towards the idea that somebody is stuck in a fog of life and can't see an answer outside of ending their life. And in fact, when they do this, they are choosing this on behalf of, they are considering, in their reality, they are considering the feelings and the lives of their loved ones and family. And that who are these people to judge and say this is a selfish act when they don't understand really what this person is doing when they are choosing to end their lives. I want you to maybe elaborate on that, but also just say personally from my perspective that I just felt it was a very compelling letter and well written, and it made me just want to pick up your other writing.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so one of the kids from my school, this is the young man, I taught him for 6 years, committed suicide yesterday. And in talking about it, somebody said, well, that is just so selfish. How could he do that to his mother? Well, boy, I'm still angry. And I woke up at 4 a.m. angry. And I wrote that letter and I'm still angry because it was such a wrong thing to say and all the way to wrong thing to think. I've tried to commit suicide. And I clearly remember sitting on that bathroom floor thinking, this will make everybody better. Dave will be happier not having to put up with me. My kids will be happier not having this up and down mom. Financially, they'll be better because I will no longer be a drain on them. I mean, I just went on and on and on, and it became, I need to do this because it would be better for them. Now, is that true? No. But in it, to me, suicide seemed like the most selfless thing I could do. And so I think when people throw out those that was selfish, and I've heard it more than once, that I think they are not grasping, they're commenting on something they cannot understand. And I think not only that, they don't know who they're speaking to. So you don't know if the person you just said that to has been sitting in that fog before and can't figure out how to get out. And if they were, you just shamed them. And so it was really, really hurt. And that's why I'm like, oh my gosh, it still hurts because it's so judgmental on something you don't know anything about.
Have you?
And I don't see the point. Why say something? Why even think something like that? It's like, I don't know. It just, like I said, it really, really, really rubbed me wrong.
And yes, and you said it very eloquently in the letter and just now, in my opinion. Also with respect to, I think, something that for me was a little bit added from the letter in terms of who the audience is for when you say this and what their reality is when they receive that label of like, oh, this person was selfish. And if you are someone receiving that, that's probably not going, and this is, I think, just sort of piggybacking off what you're saying, it's not like that is going to really help that person. If they are in that fog and someone says, oh, that's selfish, I don't think it's going to necessarily convince them of that.
If anything, I think it's going to it's going to thicken the thought, because then it's going to be like, not only am I this, and this, and this, now you're labeling with selfish too.
Right. Another.
It's like, give me another thing to feel bad about. Thank you very much.
Right. I'm wondering, and this is, of course, a very, I'm sure, touchy subject that you might have thought of, or I'm not sure, but you mentioned in just now, and you mentioned the idea that your student was people were saying how could they do this to their mother, and that makes me think of your relationship with Ryan. And if you had in your mind at all related this experience to yourself and how you might deal if Ryan had a severe depression or was feeling suicidal, how you might connect with your son about that, what might be a way that you would want yourself or Ryan to, what sort of care, what sort of treatment would be ideal for Ryan, for your son, if he was feeling suicidal, or if he shared with you that he was? What might be the best way in your mind to respond to that?
Well, I can remember when I was sitting in that bathroom before I took that final, what I had thought would be the final step. I was all alone in the house, which was intentional on my part, right? And to this day, I remember thinking, and I still believe this, if somebody had just sat down, not opened their mouth, they didn't need to open their mouth, if they just entered that fog and sat next to me in the same room, I think I would have been able to get out of it. So I think to start with, if I knew this was happening with him, I would sit there, wouldn't even speak, because you can't speak. I can't enter that. But I could sit there with it I could sit in the fog with him quietly and let him know you were not in this fog alone. I think that would be the first thing. I'd just sit there. And if he wanted to talk, he could talk, but I would not give any opinions. I would not pretend I know how he feels. Then I would really seek, as a parent can, I would open my checkbook. I would do the research. Same thing my husband did, right? He found a place and he, coordinated it all. And all I had to do was show up. I didn't have to make any decisions. I didn't have to look for a place. I didn't have to evaluate a place. He did all that for me. And I would certainly, if I could convince him to go forward with the retreatment, I would pick up all of those pieces. I would make it so seamless for him to go that he literally just had to put his feet in the door. If I could, right? I mean, some people don't have the financial ability to do something like that. I am blessed that way. I could make it happen. And I think if I could make it seamless, I think when you need that kind of help and you don't want it, every obstacle that comes up is an excuse not to go. I don't know a therapist, and I don't know where to go, and I don't know if I trust a place, and I don't have money. There's all these beautiful, real excuses that you can stop the process. And I would want to eliminate all those for him.
I also love that image of just joining someone in their fog without just being present there with them in that. And it's really, I have been, I don't think I have been so far in the fog that I have never literally had an instrument of self-destruction in my hand, whether it's pills or a gun, but I've been, maybe 1 or 2 steps removed from that moment. Mm-hmm. And did not have, I had a lot of support in my life. And, maybe I did have, I did not harm myself. But I really appreciate that mindset of kind of just entering into somebody's space and holding space for them, and not trying to really necessarily actively do something about the situation, or maybe not necessarily preach to them, for example, or argue with them or reason with them, but just be with them. I kind of took some of that away from what you were saying, and felt very, seen by that as well, just in terms of wanting to show support for someone, not in any sort of specific, prescriptive sort of way, but just in kind of joining them in their level, joining them, just sitting beside them.
I don't know about you, but when I was in the fog, and it's happened more than once, I've only had one true suicide attempt, but there's been times where I've been surrounded and ready, and there's nothing anybody can say in the fog, because whatever comes out of their mouth, at least for me, makes me feel worse. It's not going to, because if they say, well, everything is great, then I feel bad that I don't think everything is great. So all you do is make me feel worse, because I'm not seeing everything is great, and you're telling me I should see it. So I don't know that there's anything you can say in the fog that's going to, the fog just has to fade. It has to blow away. I don't think there's magic words, and I think if you say the wrong thing, and most things are the wrong thing, you're going to just thicken the fog.
Yeah.
So that's why I say just sit there, just be there. Because there's nothing to say that person's ready to hear. If they were ready to hear it, they'd be out hearing it. So that's just, and that's my opinion, my experience, right? And I don't want to ever presume I understand somebody else's experience. So.
Well, June, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you joining me here today very much. I'm looking forward to reading the 2 books, and when it's ready, the 3rd book. And I hope to stay in touch as well.
Yeah, I hope you do too. This was great. I didn't know what to expect, so this was good.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you again to June Converse. You can find her 2 fictional novels, Decide to Hope and Journey to Hope, on Amazon or your preferred bookseller. She can be contacted on Instagram and Facebook, so please check the show notes for more specifics on those. June, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you. Best of luck with everything, and take care. That wraps up this episode. Please follow me on Facebook at Crazy Right Asher for live stream interviews where you can personally join me in my virtual studio and share your story, or tune in to watch others share live in real time. That's Facebook at Crazy Right Asher. Write a review, rate this podcast, subscribe, and share it with someone you care about. I'm Dave Asher, and I'm glad to be here.